Now that we know how systems like ChatGPT work, what are we going to do with it? What are the things that you can actually do with ChatGPT? And what are the 4 shins that I'm going to tell you about here to help you in that task? Well, this is the Lit Media Workshop, and you are welcome to come and see what we're going to do. This is the second, or rather the third installation of our Lit Media Workshop on chatbots. Last time we learned all about how it works, and this time we're going to learn about what to actually do with it. So, join me. What can I help you with? This is what's showing right now on the screen here, and this is the question that we actually have for today. Our goal is to try to figure out what is the range of possible tasks that we actually need to get done, that ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these other chatbots are actually good at. Well, before we do that, I want to bring us back to a few different media literacy concepts. Let's get started on that. The first is actually called garbage in, garbage out. This is actually from computer science and not from media literacy. And it's the idea, it's very pervasive, but it's most common in computer science, that if you give something garbage in the input, that the output is also going to be garbage. What does this mean for chatbots? It kind of means that you get out of it what you put into it. There's probably a couple of subtleties there that are different, but just take my word for it for now. And think about, if I'm getting garbage back, does that mean that I've actually put garbage in? Another concept that we're going to be working on is the idea of evaluation. Just because something like a bot or someone says something doesn't necessarily make that true. We looked a little bit at this when we talked about logical fallacies, but today I want to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is actually a psychological principle. And in this principle, there's this gap. There's this gap between how good people think they did on a test versus how good they actually did do. And there's several different versions of this experiment, of this test, but let's look at one right here. Now, the first component of this measured test is called a self-assessment. This is basically your subjective idea about how good you did on something. So for example, maybe you've had this experience where you took a test and you get the results back and they're much lower than you anticipated, and you're like kind of bummed out about it. I've had that experience myself. Now, this could happen either way, and basically there's also some kind of unobjective or absolute performance. This could be the score on your test. So let's try to read one of these charts here. So first, I'm just going to describe what this is. This is a performance exam with 45 different questions. And over here on this red line here, this represents the actual score that people got versus their perceived score. And these little dots are arranged in such a way where the people here under bottom, they're both accounted for. So the same group of people down here and the same group of people down here, they basically have an average. So most of them, the people in the bottom fourth, they only got about 25 questions right, but they all thought they got about 35 questions right. This gap between what the poor performers or the inexperienced people know versus the actual score that they actually got, this gap is sometimes called the Dunning-Kruger effect, named after, I assume, two people named Dunning and Kruger. Now, if you contrast that to this top scoring part here, you'll notice that this gap, I think I can touch it, let's see. This gap right here, this is much, much smaller than this gap or that gap. And even the people who thought they did the very best, they thought they might have actually done a little bit worse than they actually did. What does this mean? This means that for people who are most familiar with an area, they have the best assessment of um, whether or not they did correct on something. This could be true for music. This could be true for baseball. This could be true for all kinds of different things. And so this is what I want you to keep in your head here, because if you're actually trying to evaluate something that a chatbot is telling you or reading to you, you probably belong in this bottom part where you can't actually tell that the bot is giving you answers that are far less valuable than they actually are. Now, for this next part, I want us to think about the rhetorical situation. Previously, we've talked about the subject, audience, purpose, kind of the subject, audience, purpose triangle. This is a variation of it, and in this variation, it's a little bit more complex. And in this more complex version of the rhetorical situation, this covers basically like a context. What do we mean by rhetoric? We mean the things that people say. Now, this definitely applies to chatbots. This applies because we want to hear something. We want the chatbot to tell us something. There's some kind of a value that we're trying to get. And so there's a writer. The writer in this case is ChatGPT. There's a subject. That could be lots of different things. There's an audience. That's you. And then there's a purpose that should be shared between the writer and the audience. There's an audience and a subject and some kind of a genre. There is an exigence. Why did the author actually write about that particular subject? And these things in real life have to be negotiated. Sometimes you think you're talking about one thing, but you've entered in a conversation at the wrong time, and you don't have the appropriate context. There's also this purpose, which is what the writer is seeking from the audience, but really it's also what the audience is trying to seek from the writer. If you're writing a particular kind of genre of a novel and you subvert the expectations of the audience, they might revolt. They might say, I hate this. This isn't anything like the, historical nonfiction romance book that I'm reading, right? And then there's this like genre, which includes how the subject is presented to the audience. And so we'll return to this a little bit in the context of talking about what chatbots can do for you. Now, something that's really interesting to me is food. In this case, this list of twice-baked foods. There's all kinds of different twice-baked foods, including things like twice-baked potatoes, a double-baked biscuit, bread pudding, biscotto. I'm mostly familiar with things like shepherd's pie. And in those situations, there's this analog that I'm trying to bring up here, which is we can use the data from the internet, give it to ChatGPT, and then we can just keep rolling and rolling around all of that data until it's this nice thing that we actually want to consume. Sometimes the second day of a soup is better than the first day of a soup. Sometimes this twice-baked potato is better than the first baked potato. So we've gone from programming to Dunning-Kruger psychology to this rhetorical situation to food. Now we're going to go a little bit farther back. I don't know if it's medieval or not, but this is on the Book of Five Rings. This is a very famous book. I'm not sure when it was written. I think 1645, pretty old. It has a bunch of philosophy in it, and most of it's about sword fighting. But in order to be good at sword fighting, according to Miyoto Musashi, you have to be good at everything. ChatGPT it's kind of good at everything. Here's a quote. This is the way for men who want to learn my strategy. Do not think dishonestly. ChatGPT, how could you lie to me? The way is in training. Become acquainted with every art. You got to know stuff. If you get better at artistry, you might get better at sword fighting. If you get better at programming, you might get better at prompting. Know the ways of all professions. Distinguish between gain and loss in worldly matters. Can you tell the difference between what a good prompt gives you and what a bad prompt gives you? Can you tell the difference when a bot actually knows what it's talking about versus when it just wants to believe it already understands? and is suffering from a bot type Dunning-Kruger effect. Develop intuitive judgment and understanding for everything. Do you have the right feeling when you're chatting with your chatbot? Perceive things which cannot be seen. These are the subtleties in the phrasing, the way that the bot is responding. Is there something there that you should be looking for that you haven't seen yet? And pay attention even to trifles. A trifle is like just a tiny little thing. Sometimes by putting in just something a little bit wrong or a little bit in a particular direction, these chatbots, they get in like a rut. It's like they get stuck almost like they're a car in the snow. And then finally, do nothing which is of no use. Make your movements purposeful. Don't work too hard. You shouldn't have to say a lot of words necessarily. Or if you do say words, you should know why you're saying them. It should have something to do with the rhetorical situation. There's another quote that I like by Musashi. Okay. It's in the construction of houses, choice wood is made. Straight, unknotted timber of good appearance is used for the revealed pillars. Straight timber with its small defects is used for the inner pillars. Now, as an aside, that's because you want to have the nice looking stuff in the front and the not so nice looking stuff in the back. Timbers of the finest appearance, even if a little weak, is used for the thresholds, the inlets, doors, and sliding doors, and so on. Good strong timber, though it be gnarled and knotted, can always be used discreetly in construction. This basically means that you can use any material for your purpose. It can be things that are like not very refined, and ChatGPT can summarize it. It can make it something that's actually useful for you. Of course, when I say ChatGPT, I actually mean Gemini, Anthropic, Quinn, all of these different kinds of bots, DeepSeek, that are out there. They're all kind of doing the same thing at the moment. That may change, but for now, this is true. So we're going to talk about what chatbots can actually do by talking about my 4 shins. But Dr. Linder, I can hear you saying, didn't OpenAI already release a bunch of information about the things people actually do? Kind of. This is from 2023. I like to think about it with 4 different shins. Those shins are information, conversation, conversion, and generation. Now, these cover pretty much all the things that OpenAI does, and I think it's just a little bit more flexible. So we're going to pull up a chair, we're going to get a chatbot ready and going, and we're going to do each one of these things kind of sort of live. We'll see what happens. The first one is information. Now, information is basically any time that you want to get some information. You might be doing something like looking for like the capital of Paris. Is that right? That's wrong. We mean the capital of France. But you know what? Let's try to put that information in anyway. So if we ask, what is the capital of Paris? Gemini thinks for just a second. And it says, that's a bit of a trick question. Why? Because I didn't actually give it the right sort of information. It's a major city in itself, not a country or a large region that has its own capital. However, Paris is the capital of France. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try to define a word. Okay, so I've asked it to define lugubrious. The word lugubrious is an adjective meaning looking or sounding sad and dismal, often in an exaggerated or affected way. It describes a deep, mournful gloom that is sometimes overdone or self-pitying, that it borders on the melodramatic or comical. The tone is typically pessimistic, gloomy, or mournful. Good information. Now, I forgot to mention this, but we're actually on a quest today. We're going to have a central idea, and we're going to learn how to apply these 4 shins into a zoo-themed context. Just pretend we like zoos, we like seeing animals, all of that. So let's try some information about that. So following on this theme of zoos, I'm going to look for this. What are the most popular zoos in the US. Okay, so it's thinking about this, it's creating some different tiered zones, and it's saying all of these kinds of things, all right? So I've heard of this Omaha Zoo. Maybe we'll focus on that. Have I been? I don't think I've been to any of these zoos before. So there's some other zoos though. There's the Smithsonian Zoo, there's a Houston Zoo, there's the Botanical Garden in Cincinnati. This is good though. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it and say something like, I need to know how much to go to this particular zoo. Thinking. And it gives me these prices. This is super useful. And it's possibly up to date as well. Sometimes these programs are actually doing things in the background to make sure that they're right. It would be interesting to see if ChatGPT agrees. Should we try that? All right. So we're hitting it. It says it's searching the web. Admission prices, 31, and seniors get this other amount. Let's compare those. $29.95. Print off. Ooh, there's an off season here. Interesting. So these must be on season prices. They're kind of similar. They're kind of all over the place. $31.95, $26.95. I don't know. I don't know which one of these is right. Now, the best way to tell would be to actually go to the website or talk to somebody on the phone who's actually dealing with that. But we're not going to do that today. We're just gonna have to not know and be okay with that. And what's interesting is Gemini says kids are free, and kids are free 2 and under, and this just says 2 and under. So there are some things it agrees with, and probably those things are true, but they may change. And how would it know that it changed? Let's try another kind of information. Another kind of information might be something like just math. So we'll try a complex math multiplication problem. So if we multiply 2 big numbers together, it looks like 2.333 times 5. All these random things I put on is about 12.48. So I'm just going to put the same thing in ChatGPT. Maybe it will use a system to do that. I'm going to do the same thing in Gemini. All right. So let's see how close we are. 1248. How close are we? We are close. 4875, 4893. So it's off by just a little bit. Let's see. This one, 8753, more correct. But not necessarily smarter. So we've learned a couple of things here, right? What have we learned? We've learned that there's some good things that we can get this information, and actually it can get really weird information sometimes too. Things like things that your friends probably wouldn't know, or that you'd have to find a really big book to understand. And usually it's good to do something like find a source to go for that. So let's annotate that. So there's a bunch of good stuff, right? Rare facts. We can get kind of math. We can get other kinds of information, and we might even combine those kinds of information as well. Should we try a version of that? Let me give you an example. We can ask a question like, which zoos in the US have elephants that we have already talked about? So now it gives us specific examples of where they actually have elephants. So in the St. Louis Zoo, this is about the river's edge in Asia, and the Bronx Zoo, and the Houston Zoo. So there's quite a few different elephants. Let's ask it more pointed questions. I'm going to ask which ones don't have elephants in them, because it seems like there was a lot that had elephants. The only one is the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, Illinois. That's going to be our zoo this time. Okay. So I don't want to leave this without getting some bad things, and I'm just not going to show you. But I can just make stuff up sometimes. It's also confident, even when it's wrong. So not super helpful in that way. Let's go on to shin number 2. We have information, conversation, conversion, and generation. Let's go to conversation. Conversation. We've already talked a little bit about how ElizaBot worked, how you can kind of fake what's actually going on. And in computer science, there's actually something called the rubber ducky. The rubber ducky technique. And in the technique, you put a little rubber ducky on your desk and you talk to the rubber ducky. You tell them exactly how the program is working because you know it should be working. And obviously the computer is just creating it wrong. But what you actually end up finding is that by talking to an inanimate object like a rubber ducky, sometimes you can figure out where the flaw is in your logic if you just try to talk it through from the beginning to the end. And I think maybe sometimes it can be helpful to talk to a chatbot like this. So let's try an interesting prompt here. Okay, so my prompt goes something like this. Let's have a conversation. You take on the role of a zoo manager working at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, Illinois. Remember, this is the one that doesn't have an elephant. I will take the role of a young person who's trying to figure out where I should go. Please do not break character unless I say time to stop. Okay. Now, why would you do this? You might do this to kind of get an idea of where you actually want to take your kids or maybe your friends into this particular zoo. So it gives us some information. I'm not going to read all of that on the screen, and it's doing the right things, right? It's saying, what kind of experience are you looking for today? And I think this kid is going to say something like, let's make him like kind of a bad kid. I just want to eat candy and not have to walk very far. Let's see what they say. Oh, I understand completely. Sometimes you just need a little quick and easy spot to enjoy it. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is not very good. But the chat thing does show me some actual things, but it's talking like a bot. I think we're going to try again. Let's try again on a prompt. Now I'm going to iterate on this prompt to make it more conversational. And the problem is really, it's kind of my fault because I'm asking for a conversation. But I didn't really say exactly that. So let's take a look again at this rhetorical situation. Okay, so in this case, what I'm actually looking for is very short conversations with only the same kind of information you might get from an actual verbal conversation. It should feel very conversational. It should not feel like I'm actually talking to a bot. Of course, I know that I am talking to a bot. And so I need to change. I've already described my audience, right? I've already described the subject. The subject is the zoo. There's a particular zoo in Chicago. And what I need the writer to understand is more like the genre, the exigence, why it's actually writing it. So let's try that out. And when I say don't break character, I need to actually describe what that means. So let's try it out. What am I going to add here? Okay, so here's what I came up with. I'll let you read it if you want to, but basically I'm saying, please be short. Don't give me any bot kind of information. Let's try it out. So, I'm the zoo manager here at Lincoln Park, and I'm here to help you find your best spots. Where are you hoping to see today while you're here? Let's ask first about the lions. Are there any big cats? That means like lions, tigers, maybe bears. Absolutely. You must first head straight to the Pepper Family Wildlife Center. It's beautiful. Does this place actually exist? It probably does, but one of the commenters should maybe tell me. Very nice. Oh, great. What about lions? Or what about elephants? Discontinued its elephant program. Oh no. And you know what else? It broke character. It's got these bullet points in, and it's just not listening. My prompt isn't good enough, and I'm gonna have to do some research to actually figure out how to do this. Or maybe we could try ChatGPT, but I'll let you try that. Okay, so this is kind of like a conversational type thing, and I've done these before to various amounts of success. Some people, they love doing this kind of thing, and it helps them think or whatever. So yeah, let's do some good and bad. Now the first thing is fun, but I don't know. Maybe it's not so fun. I'm gonna try to ask a more funny kind of question right now. Now our pretend kid is gonna ask, are there any animals I can throw peanuts at? Just kind of pretending that he's still in character. That's an important question. It says no, you can't feed the animals. They all have special diets. The zookeeper doesn't have any personality. I don't really give him any. Oh well. Okay, so they're fun, and you know it can be interesting, right? You can talk to people like Einstein, pretend Einstein. It can give you like a new format for learning that could be fun and appealing to some people. There's a lot of bad, mostly that you know, the experience of the bots, they just might not be super relatable. Relatable? Right? Like if you ask it questions, there may be just some things it just doesn't happen to know. And it's definitely like less direct. So if you're talking about things like, you know, actual facts, it's probably not great. The other thing is it's often like verbose. What does verbose mean? We could ask ChatGPT or Gemini, but it just means uses too many words, uses lots and lots of words, and I don't like reading. It takes too much work. And so the less that you read, the more summarized it is, kind of the better. If only there was some kind of a shin that could help me summarize something. That shin does exist, and it's called conversion. Conversion. We talked about Musashi and how he has all of these ideas about converting from one thing to another. If you're good at sword fighting, you better be good at painting. If you get better at painting, you're gonna get better at sword fighting. ChatGPT, Gemini, they can do the same kinds of things. They can convert things. This includes activities such as summary, combination, Then towards the end, I see this thing over here, these razor bills. Maybe this is the last thing mentioned. If that's true, then it's doing exactly what I asked it to do. It's just extracting the information. So If we go back here, we hit Control F, we hit Control V, there it is. It's the last thing in the article is the razor bills. So it's doing what I wanted. It's getting that information. It's putting it right there in a place that I want. I can have it reorganize the information, which it might actually do that. Next on our list. Next on our list is combination. So let's try to do a combination. Let's look for a different zoo. We looked at the San Diego Zoo. I think they may have elephants. And let's see if we can get a good comparison between those two zoos. So I'm going to do basically what I did before. I'm going to copy all this information. Next, I'm going to post it in the same thread, the same kind of context area for where I'm working. So here's what it looks like. Here's some second zoo text. First, make a similar list of extracted articles from only this article. Then, I should say not the, compare the animals from each of your extracted lists. Then provide a summary of animals they both have. So I'm going to paste this in. It's going to slow down for a second while I paste it. Lots of information. So I'm going to hit go on that and see what happens. Now, first it's going to give us this big list of animals, and then it's going to actually do that comparison. And you can use this. You can use this to compare. You can use this to contrast. You could use this to kind of plan like a trip to see if you're actually going to tick off all the boxes you hope to take. Man, there's a lot of more animals existing in this particular zoo. It must be a huge zoo. Wow. Amazing. Llamas, horses, beautiful fruit doves, superb starlings, not like those regular starlings. So here's the list. It looks like they both have some unique animals, but San Diego has more unique animals. And here's the shared animals in a big hierarchical list, right? So remember, I told you about these kinds of formats. Some of them look like this hierarchical list. That is exactly what we're seeing right here. We're seeing apes and primates and these different kinds. We're seeing the cats, African lions, or simply lions. So if you went to either one of these zoos, you could see all of these kinds of animals. And so we've kind of crossed the line almost between summary and generation. And that brings us to the fourth and maybe the most important shin in Dr. Linder's 4 shins. Which one is that? It is generation. I'm talking about my generation. Generation. This is probably the thing that ChatGPT and Gemini and all of these large language models, chatbots, are really known for. You can do all kinds of things, right? We might make like a joke. We might have like a poem. Things ordinarily reserved just for the most lackadaisical of humans can now be done by number crunching machines slurping on nuclear power. We can also do things like pictures with many of these systems. But we can do other things too, right? We can make an invitation. We could plan a trip. We could make our own zoo. At least we could like plan it out, right? And at the end of this, maybe for those who want to keep watching, I'll do a little encore and we'll do a JavaScript game. Maybe. Okay, I'm going to try to go through these pretty fast. Some of you have seen these already before, but I want to just demonstrate how it's possible and maybe a little prompt sugar that can help you with it. For this, I'm going to abruptly change subjects here. I'm going to pick an animal at random. We're going to pick a jaguar. So let's see how this goes. Tell me a funny kid's joke about a jaguar. Why did the jaguar turn off the radio? Because he couldn't stand the jungle music. Jungle music being something that's got a lot of drums and bass in it. Okay. How about write a poem? 4 lines about a happy jaguar. The spotted cat is sleek and bright. He stretches out in sunlit ease, a golden hunter, pure delight, content beneath the jungle trees. Content, I should say, not content. Wow. We wrote a poem, and I already talked about the sonnet in Alan Turing's piece of work that defined the Turing test. So we're not going to go over that, but this has been a long time coming. It's super interesting. Let's say draw this happy jaguar and put the poem text in it, please. I like the please. Can it do it? Is loading Nano Banana. This is Google/Gemini's whatever thing. It might take a while. I haven't actually tried this out here. Oh, there it is. There's the jaguar. The spotted cat is sleek and bright. It stretches out in sunlit ease. A golden hunter, pure delight, content beneath the jungle trees. Put it on a t-shirt. Put on a t-shirt. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's so easy. It makes it kind of, I feel like, worked hard enough for something so content. So content. Look at those happy eyes. They're just smiling at you. I've had moments where I felt like that pretend computer jaguar, and I don't have it right now, but I will someday again. Okay. What's next? What's next? We did an image. Wow. Let's do an invitation. I'm going to say I'm planning on going to. So I'm basically just asking to draft an invitation for me. It should be really simple, I hope. We'll see what it comes up with here. Invitation to Lincoln Park Zoo. Hi, everyone. I would love for son's name, blah, 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 blah. And it's got these templates here, right? And so you could see yourself sending emails or doing a Facebook message and, manipulating this. And there we go. That would be great. Even sometimes you can create things like a PDF for you, but I don't want to do that right now. Just know that it's possible sometimes to do that. Now, let's try a kind of a funny, weird prompt. So I'm basically asking about if I wanted to make my own zoo, what are some things I should design for that? What are things I should get to do, right? If I wanted to make my own zoos, I'd have to learn about zoology and animal behavior. I'd have to focus about these things and education and interpretation. And I want to say something like, actually, can we dumb this down? I want to print it out for some elementary students. So if we do this, this is just a way to get it to be a shorter amount of things to write. And I think that probably some of you watching this may have not heard of some of these big words before. So let's see what they're really trying to say here. And I didn't use the word you, but it doesn't matter. What to study, why it helps, animals and nature, drawing and building, land and plants, and being a teacher. These are all the things you would need to do if you wanted to have your own Chicago or San Diego zoo and to design that. And that's about all the things that you can actually design. So for most of you, we're just about done with this lecture. You don't have to watch more. But if you want to, you can stick around and look at what it would look like to actually create a JavaScript game. Next time we're going to look at things like steering, control, evaluation of our chatbots here. There's so many things that you could study related to this. You might even want to for homework. Just try some of these tasks out that we learned. What are the 4 shins? We have information. These are the tasks that it can do where you're just getting that information, trying to get the facts. We have conversation. This is where you want to have a back and forth with the system, maybe even taking on a particular role or having it engage in a particular mode of conversation. Then we have conversion. This is about things like summary, extraction, changing from one form to another, taking two different lists and mixing them up together. And then we have generation. This can be all kinds of things like making poems, making text, making something interesting, creating an image, sending out invitations. I will say that I don't really like the way that AI writes, and we're going to kind of stop this conversation where we almost began it. And that's on this concept of garbage in, garbage out. If you put in garbage, you'll probably get back garbage. If you try and you use some different prompts and you think about different things, you take the Musashi route and you're excellent in everything, and you're able to distinguish good things from bad things, useful things from non-useful things, with as little effort that is directed as possible, you might get the best you can get out of things like ChatGPT. I'm back. We're going to do that JavaScript thing. Should we do that? I like to use Gemini for this kind of thing. Okay, so I might do a longer video about this at some point, but here's one that you can try. Make a simple JavaScript game that I can paste into a regular HTML div element. We kind of learned about this in I don't know, a month or so ago. I want the game to be about jaguars, but basically the same kind of game where you catch things and the score timer goes up. As simple as possible. So what you can do with Gemini is sometimes it actually creates this code and it'll throw it into something that executes it as well. In this case, it looks like it might actually not be doing that. So we can do what we did before. We can just copy this code and I can throw up a notepad and paste it in and see if it works. So here's my notepad, saving as a text file. Well, it looks like this. Looks like I'm a jaguar because I'm this color. I'm catching things. It's kind of working. That's pretty cool. And there's this whole movement of, vibe coding and people who can do this kind of thing. And you might even be able to look through the code and figure out something that you can change. For example, the speed of things. There's also been studies that show probably you're not going to get amazing things out of some of these models, but the reviews are definitely mixed. People are starting to develop into different camps to decide whether or not this is good or not. And so this is it. Maybe I'll do a longer video on this. Let me know what you think. All right. Goodbye.